If you lead a team, run a company, or you're a founder, I want to ask you an important question today. Have you ever had a moment in that business where things just feel off? Like you can't quite put your finger on it. You just notice things like production isn't where you expect it to be. And you start noticing there's waste in pockets around the business. That waste could show up as wasted time or wasted materials, even wasted effort. And you find yourself looking around and thinking, what's really going on here? Because on the surface, it probably should be working better than it is. And if you've ever been there, you know this feeling. You look at the numbers, you look at the output, and you look at the people, and something still, it just doesn't add up. Hey, welcome back. I'm James Mayhew, and you're listening to the Leadership in 5 podcast. Now let's go back to that for a second. You're looking at your business and something's off. You see the results and you realize something just isn't working. But what's causing it? Well, that can be a little harder to spot, especially when you're right in the middle of it. There's anxiousness around, there's tension. And it can show up in some really unhealthy ways where employees begin to assume things about leadership. And then the old rumor mill, it starts ramping up, and you'll notice how conversations between leaders, people that you count on, probably the most important conversations are happening outside of meetings with you instead of during them. Teams don't just trust each other's work anymore. Leaders start protecting their own group instead of working with other teams and working together. And those results, well, they start to accumulate over time. So things like decisions, well, they take longer than they should. And people hesitate to do something out of fear because they don't want to get caught doing something wrong and feel the consequences of it. Overall, work, it just kind of slows down. So what's actually going on here? Last episode, we talked about how trust is present in healthy companies. But for those companies that aren't as healthy, trust often gets replaced with something else: suspicion. There are rumors about the company's finances, for example. There's some chatter about potential layoffs. There's some gossip about certain relationships or favors for people. And that comes from people who feel passed over because they didn't get the raise or they didn't get the promotion that they wanted. There's talk about a major customer that threatens to take their business elsewhere. And all of that suspicion and assumption, it spreads like a virus through teams and departments. It begins to impact how people interpret decisions that are made. See, suspicion, it changes the way people communicate. There's innuendo, and people start to become passive-aggressive with each other. Maybe they become passive-aggressive with the leadership. And before long, people aren't working from this same understanding that used to be there. They're working from their own interpretation of what's actually going on. So they read into a tone instead of actually listening to what's being said. They look for meaning behind decisions instead of trying to understand the decision itself. And their confidence in the company and the product and the people, it all starts to fade. Now, here's what makes this difficult for leaders who aren't as connected to the business as they could be. You see the dysfunction, but you don't always have a good grip on how the environment got there, because suspicion just doesn't show up one day. It happens over time, and then it's observed in visible behavior. And again, that's why it's so easy to miss until it shows up in some form of loss on things that are being measured, like KPIs or primary job responsibilities or calibrated goals. And this is where it connects back to what we talked about in the last episode. If trust starts earlier than most people realize, then the absence or even the opposite of it also starts earlier than most people realize and recognize. When trust isn't there or when it breaks, that other thing replaces it. Suspicion. But it doesn't stop there, because left alone, that suspicion turns into something even harder to overcome. And that's what we're going to get into in episode 85. So until then, I want to leave you with something. If you lead a team and you're noticing that something feels off, don't assume it will fix itself. Don't assume someone else is addressing it or that it will just pass. Take the reins, figure out what's going on, and work to correct it, because that's how you leave it better.